Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a look at some really challenging historical documents, things like Abbey chronicles, disciplinary records, noble family accounts.
Yeah, tough stuff.
Definitely. And we're using them to explore something often glossed over, the reality for children, particularly noble girls who ended up in medieval convents, places like Whitby Abbey, Shaftesbury, Barking.
Famous names, but with a hidden history.
Exactly. And I want you, just for a second, to put yourself in that world. Picture this.
Yep.
It's 1247 AD. You're 7 years old.
Just 7.
You wake up. Bells are ringing, cutting through the dark, calling you to prayer. It's freezing cold. Your breath hangs in the air. You're pulling on this rough, scratchy wool habit.
Not the silk you might have known.
Not at all. And deep down, your childhood is just over. Not because you chose it, not out of devotion, but because of politics. Your world is now cold, silence, and this crushing weight of someone else's decision.
And that image, that feeling, it's so important because it cuts right through the idealized picture. We're looking past the spiritual claims these places made.
Right.
We're diving into how childhood itself was systematically dismantled inside those walls. Because for the powerful families involved, these children, honestly, they were often just expendable currency, pawns in the medieval power game.
It's that justification that gets me. How quickly alliance building turns into holy sacrifice in the rhetoric. The political why seems clear: curry favor with the church, secure power.
Standard medieval practice, really.
But let's follow the money, like you said, because the records show these families weren't just giving their daughters away. They were paying, often massively, to have them taken in.
Yes, and that's where the analysis gets really interesting, separating myth from reality.
Yeah.
These weren't poor kids sent off out of necessity.
Well,
They were daughters of the elite, sometimes sent incredibly young, like 4 or 5 years old. Think about Lady Edith sent to Shaftesbury in 1043 AD. Barely 4.
4 years old as a political chip.
Precisely. And it wasn't a cheap deal either. These families paid huge dowries. The records show sums larger than typical marriage settlements sometimes. This made places like Shaftesbury Abbey incredibly wealthy. We've got records showing they pulled in over 2,000 marks in dowries in just 1 year, 1267 AD.
So the convent itself becomes this powerful financial entity.
Built entirely on the system, this
Yeah.
high-cost, religiously justified abandonment.
And the change for the child, it's immediate, it's physical, it's brutal. You go from a manor house, maybe loving care, to an environment where comfort is just stripped away.
Instantly.
Your hands, used to maybe embroidery or just softness, suddenly they're cracked, bleeding from cold, from manual work.
And that physical shock wasn't accidental. It was part of the design. The sources document it clearly. Haircut short to fight vanity, silk swapped for scratchy wool. There's that heartbreaking detail about Parvati Edith, little Edith crying, her tears literally freezing on her face, calling for her mother in Saxon. But the nuns, they insisted on Latin only.
So her language, her comfort, her identity, just confiscated.
Right away. Yes.
It's hard to believe that level of, neglect wasn't seen for what it was. The sources call it spiritual discipline. Okay, but surely someone, an abbess maybe, thought, this is just cruel.
Well, it wasn't just noticed, it was enforced. And that brings us to how they controlled them. Sleep deprivation and cold were key tools.
Right.
The daily schedule. It looks designed to create chronic stress in a child. Waking at 4 a.m. for the first bell. But then constant interruptions. Matins at midnight, lauds around 3 a.m.
Just perpetually exhausted.
Exactly. And the cold. You mentioned the cold, and it's been relentless.
Yeah.
Records from Neminster Abbey talk about dormitories so cold, ice formed inside.
Inside.
Inside. On water basins. These kids slept fully clothed, huddled together, maybe 3 or 4 on a narrow straw mattress, and still got frostbite.
And that cold could be fatal.
Tragically, yes. We have this account. Marie from Normandy at Amesbury Abbey, 1248. She was about 5, didn't speak English. The records say she froze to death one February morning. Her little body was just carried away while the other children recited prayers. Death became almost mundane.
Unremarkable. And if the cold or exhaustion didn't break their spirit, there was the hunger.
Intentional hunger, yes. Food is control. They ate maybe once, sometimes twice a day. Gruel, black bread, water, meat. Almost never, except tiny bits on major feast days.
And this wasn't just poor resources, it was deliberate policy.
The sources are pretty clear. Hunger was seen as a spiritual tool, meant to purify. But the irony is, it often did the opposite.
How so?
Take Agnes of Bohemia, around 1234. Her confessor wrote about her. She wasn't weeping over missing her family. She was obsessed with food, dreaming of roast chicken, counting minutes between meals.
Just basic survival instinct taking over?
Precisely. The confessor noted, chillingly, this is not devotion. This is desperation. The starvation wasn't purifying her soul. It was focusing her entire being on physical need.
So beyond the physical pain, you enter this architecture of fear, psychological control. When you're always cold, always hungry, the rules become everything. And silence. Silence was survival.
Total silence, often. Unless required to speak. The girls developed this whole nonverbal language. A slight tilt of the head might mean hunger. A certain slump could signal despair. They had to communicate somehow.
But that silence could be broken violently, couldn't it?
Frequently. By systematic punishment. Arking Abbey was known for its strictness. They had a discipline chamber.
Sounds ominous.
It was. We have Sister Maynard's Lab Correction, her correction book from the early 1200s. It's just a horrifying list of routine cruelty.
Like what? Give us an example.
Okay, Alicia, age 7, struck 5 times. Her crime. Laughing during the afternoon prayer service.
Laughing, a 7-year-old.
Or little Beatus, just 5. 10 strokes for wetting her bedding. These weren't rare events. They were daily occurrences, designed to instill absolute fear of making any mistake.
And the surveillance. It sounds like it went beyond action.
Oh, it did. It aimed inward. It policed thoughts. Joanna of Aquitaine at Fonthood Abbey in 1176. She wrote about being terrified. She was beaten because her thoughts supposedly wandered during matins.
How could they even know?
Exactly. She wrote something like, "How do they know what I think? I fear they can see inside my mind." They were teaching children to fear their own inner world.
And on top of that fear, they actively broke emotional bonds.
Deliberately.
Yeah.
Any affection for family was labeled idolatry, bad, wrong.
Oh.
At places like Elto Abbey, they'd move children between dorms regularly, specifically to stop friendships forming. Letters from home, often read aloud to everyone, stripping away any private comfort.
It's systematic isolation.
It is. And it creates what modern psychology calls learned helplessness. It's severe psychological abuse, plain and simple, designed to break the individual.
That feeling of becoming hollow, Lady Maud de Brass wrote about that in her secret diary, didn't she? Trying to remember her mother's faith, just feeling emptiness.
Yes, that hollowness is the result. And that kind of total control, that isolation, it inevitably shielded darker things too.
You mean abuse?
Unfortunately, yes. Where you have absolute power and total isolation, abuse often follows. The sources do mention it, though it's often minimized or, frankly, covered up.
Right.
We have Father Edmund the Confessor writing to his bishop from Well Abbey, 1278. He was distressed because young girls were talking about inappropriate touching by older nuns, things that deeply disturbed them.
And cover-ups happened, especially if powerful people were involved.
Absolutely. The system protected itself. There's the case of Dame Agnes of Huntington and abbess at Stow Abbey, investigated for unseemly conduct. The investigation just vanished.
Yeah.
Dropped quietly after she made some substantial financial gift to the church. The girls who accused her, they were threatened with excommunication.
So silence bought with money and threats.
That was the clear message. Wealth trumped welfare.
And alongside all this, what about education? Were they at least learning?
Learning, yes, but a very specific kind of learning. It wasn't education to empower them for the world outside. At Look Abbey, for example, the curriculum was basically memorize psalms, do needlework, study saints' lives.
No science, maths, critical thinking?
Non-existent. The goal, stated quite explicitly in some charters, was that they should remain ignorant of worldly knowledge and pure in their devotion. It was training for obedience, not independent thought.
The cumulative effect of all this? Cold, hunger, fear, isolation, lack of real education. The mortality rates must have been high.
Tragically high. The records we have suggest yearly a 30% mortality rate for girls under 10 in some places.
30%.
And death was recorded so. Matter-of-factly, Johanna, age 5, died of fever. No surname, no family notification mentioned, buried unmarked.
Just gone.
There was this observation by Sister Marguerite at Shaftesbury. She called it failure to thrive. Children whose spirits were just so broken their bodies seemed to give up.
It's almost unbearable. Yet,
Yeah.
even in that crushing system, there were tiny sparks of humanity. Acts of resistance.
Yes, small but incredibly poignant acts. Archaeology at Shaftesbury actually uncovered a little hidden cache of objects. A tiny wooden doll, a pressed flower.
Things hidden away.
Exactly. And a note, written in a child's Norman French by a 7-year-old girl named Eleanor. It just said she wrote it so someone will know I was here, that I was real, that I was loved.
Oh, wow. Just wanting to be remembered.
That tiny act, writing that note, hiding it, it's incredibly powerful. It shows that desire for identity, for connection, surviving even under that immense pressure. We also see in things like Lady Marguerite de Clare's journal at Amesbury, kept in secret, written in code. She wrote, "They may own my body, but my soul remains my own." That internal fight to stay whole.
Amazing resilience. But for those who survived and maybe eventually left, the trauma must have been immense.
Profound. Lady Matilda of Gloucester was released at 16 after 8 years inside. Her brother came to collect her. He wrote later that she flinched when he tried to embrace her. She only spoke in whispers.
Just completely changed.
He said the girl he knew was gone, replaced by a frightened ghost. The damage was deep and lasting.
And sometimes, tragically, that damage gets passed on, doesn't it? The cycle of abuse.
It does. We see instances where women who endured this brutal childhood became abbesses or senior nuns themselves and replicated the same cruelty. Dame Margaret of Anjou at Amesbury. She reportedly said she knew no other way to train children, only the way she'd been trained with harshness, with the rod.
So the trauma just echoed down the generations.
For centuries, long after the original political reasons faded, the cruelty became embedded in the system itself.
So let's try and pull this together for you listening, this deep dive.
Yeah.
It shows the medieval convent system, especially for these noble girls, wasn't just strict. It was a systematic, almost state-sanctioned dismantling of personality.
Yes.
The methods used the isolation, the surveillance, the engineered helplessness, the starvation. We recognize these today from psychology as techniques of severe abuse, just wrapped up in religious language.
And maybe the hardest part to grapple with is the family's role. Their complicity. They told themselves, maybe truly believed, they were doing what was best for the child's soul. That suffering purified them somehow, that breaking their will was a kind of warped love.
But the evidence just doesn't support that outcome.
No. It shows the terrible price paid by the most vulnerable when authority, political or religious, goes unquestioned.
You might sit there thinking, okay, it was horrific, but did all that suffering maybe buy them salvation like their parents hoped?
A common question.
But the record suggests something else. When the monasteries were eventually dissolved, many women who'd spent their whole lives inside, they couldn't cope outside. There's that quote from Lady Margaret Pole, freed after decades. "They have opened the cage, but the bird has forgotten how to fly."
Such a powerful image, lost in the world.
So the real question maybe isn't about what they gained in heaven, it's about what we lose right here on earth whenever we allow any system, any ideology to define cruelty as necessary or even noble. They're stories. Like, they aren't just distant history, they're a warning. A reminder that childhood itself is sacred and needs protecting. Always.